Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of the Humans and AI podcast. This is the podcast where we dive into the real-life stories of the top leaders and entrepreneurs within the artificial intelligence, high-performance computing, and data center space. These people truly are at the top of their game. We're going to have honest and authentic conversations with all our guests. We're going to chat about their career journeys, the highs and the lows, and even the lessons they've learned from the mistakes they've made and the victories they've celebrated along the way. It's all about sharing their experience and their knowledge and how they see the future of the space they're in. So if you're looking for practical advice from people who've walked the same path as you, or just a little inspiration, you're in the right place. We're going to be dropping new episodes every Thursday, so make sure you stay tuned and don't miss out. Well, thank you very much for coming, Karl. Really appreciate it. Good to see you.
Yeah.
So hopefully you didn't find it too difficult to find.
No, actually I know the area quite well.
Yep,
yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, you're here.
Yeah, there's the Fox pub around the corner. I know that pub, so yeah.
Fantastic. Well, look, for the benefit of people that are listening, do you mind just giving an introduction, who you are, your current role, where you work now, just a high-level helicopter view.
High-level helicopter view,
and
okay.
We'll go to the rest later.
So I'm Karl Havard. I'm the COO of Nscale. I've been in the industry too long, but come from the cloud side, so ex-Google, ex-AWS, and find myself jumping into the generative AI boom, which I think most of us that have come from cloud or come from the DC world, that's the way everything's going. So we're all naturally going in that direction, which is very exciting. So
it is a really exciting space. Like you, I came from the cloud. Okay. So private cloud, then public cloud, and now obviously in this Gen AI space as well. And it's fascinating. It really is. So, but obviously there's a big history with yourself. So you weren't always in tech. So it'd be good just to learn a little bit more about who you are and your background.
Yeah.
That got you to here. Let's go right back to probably the first gig. I think it wasn't a traditional one for everyone.
Oh, I used to wear green. Yeah. Well, it's funny you say it wasn't tech, but I worked 10 years with tanks.
Yeah.
Right? Which from the outside looked like big heavy lumps of metal. Mm-hmm. But interestingly, there's a lot of technology inside them. And I was an electronic and communications engineer, so attached to a couple of cavalry regiments. Tank regiments. Horses are no longer the way to go to war.
Not that old.
No. Maybe look it. But Royal Hussars and Queen's Own Hussars I was attached to. And in between, there was a small unit called 2ADS I was linked to as well. So, yeah, fun times. I mean, I learned a lot about life in that time. Also learned a lot about technology and how, I guess, military technology always finds its way into, it seems to be a precursor to what happens in civilian life, as I call it back then. So, like communications, TCP/IP, the wireless protocols, etc., all found their way quite quickly into the working world as we know it, as well as encryption and all those sorts
Very
of
much,
things.
mainstream technology, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah.
So obviously you left the army, obviously technical skills, leadership skills, all those different things you learn, and obviously I come from an army family, so I do know all about their sort of different styles and what have you. And then you went into, was it GE, I think?
Yeah, so GC. So General Electric company, subsidiary of that.
Yeah.
So moving from, I guess, wearing green into freedom to wear what you want, to grow your hair if you wanted to, and into a world of it was two things. It was building management systems and warehouse management systems, which interestingly translates quite nicely from how a squadron of tanks will work. The same electronics, same principles are then applied about, how the heating and lighting and all that work within a large complex of buildings. I remember working at the NEC, probably being my first engineering gig there and making sure all those units were being managed correctly, the energy was being managed right, the light levels were being managed correctly. Got early access to some gigs, so working away and hearing ELO playing on stage and a few others. So that was fun. But I soon realised that after about 2 years of being an engineer, the company car I was driving wasn't as good as the sales guys.
I was going to ask you, how did you make that transition and what the reason was?
Well, it's funny because I was sort of found myself in the R&D part of GC and bringing new products to market. But I'd be the guy rolled out to sales meetings that would understand the technology. And I used to watch that unfold, a few meetings. Like, there was a big British gas site up in Loughborough that we won. And being part of that whole process, and then looking at the sales guy, who was great, and I'm sure he did a lot of work, but he pulled in a very nice commission check associated to that. And I'm not driven by money in any way, but it's a level of fairness, right?
Yeah, no, of course.
Effort reward. And I thought, interesting, I could probably do what he did. And so there was internal recruitment, as there was. And this regional role in the Midlands popped up, and I put my hand up for it, went through the process, got selected. And that was my move into the commercial world.
Oh, wow, right, crikey. So you started off there. So, and was that like what was a sales engineer type thing? Or
straight account target, yeah. So it's moving from really R&D engineering straight into a commercial role, which is a bit of a leap of faith from GEC. But I guess I was able to communicate. Yeah. 2 ears, 1 mouth, listening and all that sort of stuff, find solutions. So, yeah.
And do you think that came from, obviously, your army days, that communication sort of skill set, or was that just naturally, obviously, who you are?
I don't know. It's one of those things where, do you communicate naturally from being, from childhood upwards, or do you have to learn that? And I think the army definitely helped, because going straight in to the military, doing my electronics, etc., and then going to cavalry regiments. So there's a lot of history of cavalry regiments. When you go into the mess, you've got stuff from the charge of the Light Brigade in the mess, the silverware, the colours and everything. And you then get people that have come out of school early, like I did, who maybe want to drive tanks, or they may want to do something like the electronics and do the 3 years to get to that point. Or they come from a family heritage where their father, grandfather, great-grandfather have always been linked into the regiments. They'll come in as a commissioned rank. And some of these, have blue blood running through their veins. So you do get to learn to communicate with every single level. And I found myself in some fascinating discussions, out in the Ulu, sitting next to someone that you've never really known properly, and them talking about their background and heritage and how they were on the balcony at the Silver Jubilee and all those sorts of things.
So naturally moving into sales, people buy from people at the end of the day.
I think so,
being able to build that rapport.
It's also not losing who you are. Yeah. So not trying to put a front on to be able to communicate with the different types of people, because, excuse me, itchy nose. But, you sometimes see a chameleon type approach where people, which is naturally adapt to the situation, but maybe become something different than themselves.
It's sort of shadowing, and it's not necessarily authentic, isn't it?
No, exactly. So I'm always keen to ensure that, never lose who you are, and always try and stay true to yourself, but also, communicate effectively as well.
So you obviously moved in sales, I'm sure very successful at that, and then you also quite early on in your career, if memory serves, started your own business as well.
I did, yeah. I mean, a number of things, actually. I mean, you've read my CV or LinkedIn profile.
I had a little bit of a look. Came prepared.
So moved from GC and then into another auto data capture, it was called back in those days, Symbol Technologies, in a more senior sales role, and that was fun. And this was late 90s, and I was fortunate enough to get exposed to Amazon in the UK. They were saying, we want to open up a big warehouse, because they just had a bookstore in Slough. As in 2 or 3 people moving books around from orders that were coming in. And I can recall it, it wasn't a busy place. But they had grand ambitions. And then I went into their head office, sat down with a couple of people, and they had all this press on the wall from people in the US who'd set up Amazon. I know now that was Jeff Bezos, obviously. And thinking, well, this is really, really interesting. They're trying to automate the whole customer experience through the internet. And the company I'm with has a solution which can help them automate some of that process and enhance the customer experience and speed up the whole delivery of order to shipment. And thankfully, we won the deal. So all the DCs across Europe, actually. So it was a nice opportunity to think that, okay, I'm no longer a sales engineer or an engineer. I'm actually a salesperson now. And I was able to see some form of commission from that, which was great. So it then struck me that this internet thing might be doing something quite special. So myself and a couple of others, we decided to set something up in just before year 2000, before Y2K kicked off. And we did. We set it up. And what we did was we went over to the US. We scouted a few up-and-coming web performance technology companies. I remember the names: Keynote, Perivo, Gomez. And struck deals to be their exclusive partners in UK and Europe and bring their technologies in. And it worked. I mean, it was... you might say there was a great strategy behind it, but actually, no, sometimes you have to take a punt.
Yeah, of course.
And so we did. And so we were able to represent these companies in the US. It was the early days of SaaS, software as a service. We would simulate audiences from all over the globe to various websites and tell them how their website's performing, and then a bit of consultancy to help them improve where they needed to fix things. And we signed up like Barclays Capital, John Lewis,
Oh, some big businesses.
Back in the day, yeah. And it was a fun time. And then one of the US companies, Gomez, put their hand up and said, right, okay, thanks for setting it up. We'd now like to acquire you. Interesting deal, though, because they said, we're also looking at acquiring one of your partners. And if we do that, you won't have license to sell our software anymore or sell software as a service anymore. That was more of a negotiation tactic, but so they got a good price for it. But that was a real learning experience, and we were able to go from 2 or 3 of us up to a team of about 35, so not massive.
Yeah.
And then when we were acquired, we had then the US funding come in, and then we acquired another small company, and we got up to about a team of about 100 spread across Europe.
For your first sort of foray into entrepreneurialism, it was quite a success, really, to be fair.
And it was never my ambition to do that. It was just seeing what was around and the opportunity at the time and say, okay, this sort of makes sense. And these guys probably know what they're doing. So and I trusted them, obviously. There was good 3 of us. And that helped a lot. There was one slightly more seasoned than myself and the other guy. He had some funding as well. There was me. I put a little bit of money in. And then the other guy was more of a technical consultant, which was a slightly different skill set to what I had. But together we were able to make it work to a degree.
So I mean, obviously to build, to recognise a gap in the market, build a company, sell it. You then stayed on a little bit longer.
Yeah,
that was naturally just that was always a bit, and then you knew you were going to go. I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it's a case where I guess like most organisations when they're acquired, and we were nowhere near IPO level.
Yeah,
just tiny. But to be acquired by an incoming organisation who knew us. There was like an element of goal setting for the next 2 years. You can't just take your money and run. There's a set of performance barriers we need you to achieve, which we did. And at the end of the 2 years, I thought, okay, that was great, learning lesson, and then went off and did a few other things. That's when I set up on my own then. But the reason being is because I thought
got a taste for it.
Sorry,
got a taste for it.
Yeah. Well, actually, it wasn't chasing money or anything like that. It was always trying to be on the edge of things. So I felt, my history, left school at 16, okay, did the electronics apprenticeship, which is like an HND equivalent. HND, have no degree. And then moved into, did what I did. And I thought, I need to do something more academic. I need to be able to say, okay, and I don't know. This is probably an insecurity thing, right? Where I felt the need. I needed a piece of paper to prove that I was intelligent.
Yeah,
and I don't know if other people feel that as well. By the way, I've missed my wife out completely in all this because I met my wife whilst in the army, so she was always behind me, backing me all the way. So I took time out to set up this thing called Somatica, which was like a small boutique consultancy, as in me and a few freelancers. But then went to, did some work with eConsultancy, did some courses for them. And then through eConsultancy, signed up for the Masters in Digital Marketing, which I completed the first year quite successfully. And then thought, well, what we're learning here is a little bit dated. So maybe some arrogance crept in there. So it was through Manchester Met, which I think he's changed its name now. And so I spoke to them and said, and they said, well, would you be interested in doing some research and moving to a PhD? I said, that'd be interesting. So, and it was the early days of social media. So to then put something together, which I then presented to a supervisory council to say, there's something in this, and how the internet is helping businesses engender trust with consumers in a world which is still very much high street and face to face, but will change. What are the dynamics at play in order to be successful at that? So I got into all sorts of research areas of human motivation and how can you build trust online and all the dynamics of that. So I found it very quite fascinating, but I had to can it because I thought, this is good. It's not earning me much money. It's actually costing me.
Yeah, that would be the problem.
But that was fine. It was no problem. But then I have 4 daughters, as you know, and I had 3 at the time. And then as I got into the second year of the PhD, up popped Tallulah, our number 4. And her middle name's Boo because she was a surprise, all for the right reasons. And it was a case of, right, okay, I need to rein that back in now and maybe get a proper job. So,
I don't blame you. 4 kids, not easy.
No.
So I trudged you with 5. That killed me.
Yeah.
Well, just all too much. But like you say, a good wife behind you kind of helps, doesn't it? Right. Yeah. So it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So
you got some token points.
I think the fact it's recorded, I'm going to show her. But
that's what I said. It.
So obviously you did that. You did these courses. A lot of obviously experience and knowledge there. In terms of them moving in, you really did move into cloud, didn't you, as well? So.
Well, yeah. In an indirect fashion, actually, I was went to a fairly sizable, not a top 4 consultancy, but a digital consultancy, which is global, but with its heart really in the UK, that wanted to move in to be a true digital advisory. And it's interesting, the word digital kept getting bandied around then, and it's a case of, what is digital, but basically it's everything. It's full stack technology, everything from the CX all the way down to the back end servers and the cabling, etc. So the consultancy was split into several lines and verticals. So the horizontals were your IT, your operating models, your security, etc., etc. It's a horizontal expertise, and then the verticals were the industry sectors. And I sat at an intersection of the digital and more the consumer facing business. So I led a practice there, which was good. But it was that got me connected because cloud was emerging at that point. Yeah. So that was what got me connected to the likes of Google and AWS, Microsoft to a degree. And it was great working with organisations like that, being a partner to them, really supportive, making you really think big. Yeah. Which I mean, it's interesting so we were put on a level playing field with other big consultancies like Accenture, Deloitte, etc. So it was nice to be seen as the company, but also as an individual, as a voice in that sort of same arena. So I really enjoyed that, and then had the opportunity to join Google, which I did. So
I mean, that's one to have on the CV, isn't it? Really,
it's an interesting place. Honestly, it's. They have a process you have to go through, like all of the clouds, and because obviously I was ex-AWS as well, but Google is quite different in its approach. It's more personable in its recruitment. So it checks you for obviously subject matter skills, but once you tick that box, then there's a whole range of other things you then have to go through, and you go through. Several interviews, and then you get put forward to a panel, which you're not part of. They just, I don't know if you've seen the film, but a lot of that's quite accurate. The internship.
Oh yeah, no, I've seen it.
Yeah. So some of those.
Vince Vaughn, I think.
Sorry,
Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson, I think.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. And so there's some processes that they share there, which are quite. So you do get your hat with your spinning noogler thing. But yeah, so after you've proven that you sort of know what you're talking about in the industry, then they will test you from an intellect point of view and give you scenarios about certain situations that you could find yourself in, and what would you do in that situation. So I won't reveal everything, but it's a case of you're just been promoted to CEO of a South African press newspaper. You've got to transform it. What would you do? The brief is slightly wider, but you think, but it's hit you'll hit it on the spot.
Yeah.
And I found that fun. I really enjoyed that because you don't know what the answer is, and there probably isn't a right or wrong answer. But yeah, I came up with something, and then after that, you then check for googliness.
Googliness. Oh, okay.
Which is one of those unquantifiable things.
Yeah.
Very different to AWS, who have the 14.
It's an American thing, though, isn't it? 'Cause rack space, your rackers, and then now I didn't realise it was googliness.
Yeah, no, I see it. It's googliness, and so you spend time with someone who's been a Googler for over. I think typically they pick people who've been there over 5 years because they want to make sure that the culture and the whole feel of the place isn't compromised in any way, which is a challenge for an organisation growing that fast. So yeah, I was googly apparently. So yeah, then I started in Google UK, and that was a great role. I mean, it was Google Cloud, and so it's early days for Google Cloud. So unlike Google, the search engine, Google Cloud was very much a challenger brand.
Yep.
But you still had the backing of Google behind you, so you never struggled to get audiences with people. So that was fun. Yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed that. So.
And you've worked for the other big hyperscalers also. You worked with AWS.
I did, yeah.
So again, you're ticking off a few of the big ones.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So that process was, I didn't go direct from Google to AWS.
Yep.
Yeah, I sort of went back to where I came from, to Google, which I always leave on my LinkedIn and on my CV that integrity is important to me. And I felt the integrity was compromised of me being taught to go back. So I leave it out there because you always learn lessons along the way. But from there, then I moved into AWS, and that's a really good professional organisation. And it sort of like struck me back to my days when I sold to Amazon in the UK, and from the early days and seeing how they evolved, to then going into a 20-year-old cloud, well established. And understanding how that business was built. They're a retailer. They were helping organisations sell their products online. They had spare capacity. Let's help others use that capacity and help them bring their businesses to life. So that was really fascinating, working there. Good people, but they have, when I joined 14, I think 16 now, leadership principles, which are all have their merit. So customer obsession, disagree and commit. Have backbone, disagree and commit, dive deep, bias for action, and a few others. Yeah. And they're all purposely designed to pull tension.
Yeah, of course.
Because if you go down one, you'll be neglecting others. So it's very cleverly constructed. And the two more recent introductions were about, because of the size of the organisation, AWS has a duty to the planet and want to be the best employer, but also do the right things for the planet as well. So that's good. And I was in a position where I sort of EMEA-based role in AWS. AWS is a very US-centric organisation. So we were building out the EMEA side, and I sort of managed the Accenture relationship in certain areas across various countries in EMEA. So,
and that's, I guess, obviously all those experiences, working for the Googles, working for the AWSs, working in consulting as well, and building out alliances. Obviously, there's a lot there. Plus, with your history there in the army, I suppose now you find yourself, if we skip straight through to today, in your first sort of COO type role.
Yeah.
I guess obviously all of that's what's shaped you and equipped you for this job now.
Well, I guess it depends on how long you want to work. I mean, I would say it's about time, right? I should have achieved this earlier because I'll go into a equivalent organisation I'm now, and the CEO is probably 20 years younger than me, and all credit to them for getting to their first. But yeah, I think like most CVs, it's never a straight line, is it? You don't plan it. I mean, if you go back in time, you are trying to plan it, but when you look back in time, the reality is it's not planned at all. So, but you try and write it so it looks cohesive. So yeah, I'm really excited about where the industry is. The emergence of generative AI, a couple of years ago, what we're trying to build, and hopefully drawing on some experience and skills that I've learned to help shape, a fledgling organisation. A well-backed organisation, a lot of smart people, but it does need a little bit of rallying together, clear vision, purpose, get everybody firing in the right direction.
So we'll just give a bit of an overview about Nscale.
Yeah.
What Nscale is, what your role is.
Yeah, okay. So Nscale, probably most people haven't heard of it as yet, but we are building out, I'll say, a purpose-driven hyperscaler for generative AI.
Yep.
So everything we're doing is engineered for generative AI, and that's everything from the build of data centers all the way up to the software that can optimize your large language models or your multimodal models. So, and there's a lot in between, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just building a data center, it's picking the right location, making sure you've got the right renewable energy source, the right water to cool. Ideally, if you can do that in a 100% renewable way, brilliant. Low PUEs, so managing it efficiently. Then getting the right infrastructure in place with the right low latency of networking in order to help organizations train or tune or infer their models, which at the moment is predominantly NVIDIA because of where the market is. But the good thing about Nscale is we've got a strong partnership with AMD as well.
Yeah.
So we are linked to their developer cloud, but we're also a partner of NVIDIA also. So we're sort of agnostic to organizations that want to do something in generative AI. Then on top of that, we've got the skills and the software to orchestrate, the training and the moving of models around. So, we use Kubernetes, Slurm for scheduling. And on top of that, we're building a marketplace of other software as well. So the term that has been used internally in Nscale is fully integrated vertical stack.
Okay.
Yeah, not catchy, right? And I'll be shot for this. I think we can use a better language which is more understandable because where the market is today, you've got all the model makers. You've got your Llamas, your Anthropics. Gemini obviously looked after by themselves, Google, and but you've got others like Mistral, Aleph Alpha in Germany, a few others, who have got great brains, great ideas, know what they want to build. So whether it is to do with large language, whether it's to do with software development. There's another company we're working with called Dua, who are looking at mapping the whole weather movement across the globe, humidity, temperature, air pressure, even movement of oceans in order to find good energy sources. Oh, wow. So great organizations, doing good things, but they know exactly what they want from a technology point of view.
Yeah. So
because they just say, we don't really want to achieve, so we know what we want, so give us that, right? And we'll sign 3 years with you. That's today. The market is going to change quite quickly when enterprises like traditional organizations figure out what they need to do with generative AI. At the moment, everyone's focused on, well, we do need our own more effective, call it chatbot. Which chatbots have been around for years, but with ChatGPT and I'm a big user of Claude, which I think is great.
I remember you saying to me actually. Claude.
It's very, very good. And people will want to bring their own data to the party, have their own private Gen AI cloud, and use it for their own benefit. So you imagine a global organization that's got its own information that it needs to keep secure. But it wants to enhance the employee efficiency by sharing information and being that central font of all knowledge. That's where I think enterprises will move. And we're starting to see it. But when we do that, those organizations are not 100% sure what they need. So that's why we're offering full stacks. So we can offer them the software capability to be able to deliver against that. So, and that's when the market will get big. At the moment, I don't think the market. I know there's a huge hype around it, but the market is purely with the model makers at the moment, and this land grab for GPUs is going on. But the market, as in the value that Gen AI can really bring, will grow next year.
Yeah, things like say just the land grab for GPUs.
Yeah,
is that a real challenge for you guys, or is it really just something to navigate? Really.
It's interesting, actually. It's on one hand, it is difficult, but when you build relationships up with the likes of NVIDIA and AMD, and you can explain and demonstrate what you're trying to build, they're thinking, "Wow, okay, then there's something here that we'd like to partner with you on." And I think. Most of who we would say are our competition, which is the public clouds. That's one thing at Nscale. I'm trying to get everyone to think and behave like a hyperscaler.
Yeah.
And we will do. there's probably a few others coming out of the US, very little inside of Europe at scale. So that's where we see that as an opportunity, and the likes of NVIDIA and AMD see that too, and therefore the challenge to get hold of GPUs, not that they prioritise or deprioritise, they just know that they would like to introduce to their customers who need what we can offer.
Yeah.
You sort of get a little bit of a support, call it that way, in those situations, and then the supply chain is much better than it was. So it was 6 to 8 months before you got sight of a GPU.
It was very difficult.
It was, yeah. That's gone away, and the supply chain's eased up now. So the OEMs have now, I think, got most of their systems sorted. But it's complex, right? I mean, it's not just the GPUs or the machines; it's everything that goes with it: the switches, the networking, etc. And if one switch is missing or one cable's too short, then the whole cluster can suffer, and you're struggling, etc. Anyway, but that's being addressed and sorted. The challenge is power. So you can get them, but where do you put them? And therefore, I think the beauty of Nscale, certainly inside of Europe and also going to the US soon, is the capacity in data center and power that we have. So we've got access to like over 400 megawatts, which hopefully means something to people watching across Europe, and even almost double that in the US coming on stream. And it's a phased approach to get that scheduled. That was why that word came from. And so we're talking about bringing some data centers online in 2027, but we're bringing it. We can chunk back to 2026, 2025, even this year.
But that's massive.
Yeah, it's huge.
And I think to have 400 available and more coming on in the States, and yet this time last year, probably nobody knew who Nscale was.
That's right.
If not, some still don't. So, that's incredible.
Yeah, exactly. And credit to Josh Payne, one of the founders, and Nathan Townsend as well.
Yeah.
They have got a great vision, and they've pulled together, I think, a very strong group of people to be able to deliver this. And the aim is to have over 1 gigawatt of power by the end of 2025.
And that's shows you're serious, force to be reckoned with, a good solution. And obviously building those relationships with NVIDIA and getting that right, getting the value prop right, so they want to be introducing you to the right people. Yeah. Obviously, it all gives the foundation for a good business model.
It does, and of course, you need the right investment as well.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing I want to say. We have got very supportive and credible investors who are all keen to see this accelerate. Yeah. So
it's a big thing. I mean, we've all seen that businesses try to get off the ground.
Yeah.
Fundraising is a full-time job in itself, a very stressful one. Yeah. And you've got to have that credibility around that solution, that service, and to want to invest. So obviously, you're 2 months into the journey, I think.
Yeah.
I think according to your LinkedIn, August, I think.
About that,
yeah, on LinkedIn. So you're there. So obviously, you were brought in as a COO, working closely with Josh and Nathan and the team that were already there now. And you mentioned it's about getting everything clear, and you want them to think like a hyperscaler.
Yeah.
I mean, what from an operational point of view to mature what is, you would expect to be a relatively immature business in terms of its tenure. What's your next sort of challenges to get it into the business it needs to be?
Yeah, I mean that's a good. I mean, if I'm honest, there's a brand building to be done, and I think we've got a good sight of how we want to do that. So, getting visible out there, making sure that our, not just logo or taglines, but making sure the values that we stand for are being portrayed into the market. So that's one thing. We're not too worried about contracts, if I'm honest. We're not too worried about bringing customers in. We're doing two things. I mean, our go-to-market is pivoted from what it was, and it's through partners and alliances.
Yeah.
So there's go-to-market partners who have the skills, a bit like consultancies. They've got the skills, they've got the customer contracts. They don't have access to generative AI power. They could typically go to the existing public clouds, but if they want sovereignty in Europe, they want to do it in a 100% renewable energy way. They want to hit those sustainability targets, be transparent about it. they want to create their own bespoke GenAI private cloud for the customers, their options are very limited because you won't get that from AWS, Google, or Microsoft. We can offer that. The other thing we are offering is the ability to white label.
Okay.
So, which is something which some organisations who have a great proposition, they've got a limited capacity, have the demand for more, but just don't have access to it. They haven't got the power to do it. So we're happy, and we've got several conversations underway to be that white label partner behind the scenes, and that's helping us reach different geographies across the globe as well. So that's really helping in several areas. So to answer your question, because I've diverted there, the biggest challenge is engineering.
Yep.
Is getting this stuff delivered on time, running as best as it can, and the team we have is they completely lose me when I get involved in conversation. I know the depth that I can go to; it's not too deep, but those guys really, really understand.
There's some brains in there for sure.
I mean, there's a guy called Elio here. He if you talk about a GPU and you see the benchmarks and whatever published by the manufacturers, he and his team will get 40% better performance out of that just by tweaking a bunch of things, which is why AMD like us, because they know we can help customers get more out of their accelerators, as they're called. So that's at the infrastructure level. Then we've got Dave Power and his team at the software stack level and the orchestration, really doing clever things there, and then opening up a marketplace to allow those software providers that require the infrastructure, etc., in order to build their business, to come to our marketplace and do that. So you can see straight away that is, I think, going to market and showing ourselves as a hyperscaler. And everybody's is starting to move in that direction internally, which is good.
You've got to get everyone on the same side, for sure.
Exactly, and but the harder thing is for, as to your point, who's Nscale? We need the market to say, oh, right, those guys. So it was interesting to see after we did the Edge Summit, AI Edge Summit in San Jose last week, and then there was some press picked up, and Nscale was included in a list of AWS and CoreWeave. There was one sentence from, I think, Data Center Magazine. It said AWS, CoreWeave, and Nscale. Okay,
you're in good company.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's one of the measures, isn't it? When you're in close proximity or in the same sentences of the companies you're aspiring to be like, then you think, okay, you're in the right.
You're gonna see people do a few Google searches, just checking.
Yeah.
Very curious. Don't know that one, but I mean, and that's fantastic. And I think, so obviously you've got your channel, you've got your clear plans. You're going down the channel route. What do you think is going to be the biggest risks into actually achieving those goals? What are the obstacles you've got to navigate?
It's a good question. I mean, there's always the risk of supply chain and RMA issues, but we've got the right SLAs and support mechanisms in place to address that. I guess it's where the market is going to head. So in order to counter that risk and not throw everything into the NVIDIA basket, although NVIDIA are a great company and we're very happy to work with them, we want to be agnostic. So as well as AMD, when the market sort of moves into enterprise and the buyers switch to more inferencing as opposed to training, there will always be training because that's how the models will improve. But organisations will want to take advantage of that, include their own, and then serve it like ChatGPT inferencing. Then that requires a different mix of config. So there is a risk to the market there because if you've built your business in a fixed DC, GPU heavy for training, then that may not be fit for purpose for inferencing case studies. So in order to counter that risk, what we required an organisation called Container, which is a self-contained, purpose-built container for generative AI. And that allows us to configure the right infrastructure within it. It's all built with direct-to-chip liquid cooling inside the power. And it can be shipped, either we can keep it on our side or it can be shipped to our customers' premises if needed. So, and then ideally plugged in with the right energy and away it goes. So we can actually customize the architecture, specifically for an organisation, call it a private Gen AI cloud, and then locate it at the edge wherever is needed. And I think if organisations just stick with fixed DCs, they'll miss that opportunity on, because the closer you can get to where the data is, obviously the faster and quicker you can do things. And data's just everywhere, right? So it's hard to locate where the right point is. Typically, in a secure environment on premise in an organisation, and that's a USP as well, compared to the public clouds. So that's the biggest risk. We need to dial that up and get that up and running. But I think we've got some time to. Yeah.
And in terms of obviously building out the business as a COO, so
yeah.
You've got lots of different teams. You've got some different technical teams, different commercial teams.
Yeah.
How do you build that sort of culture and get those people together? Because it is new. So
it is. It's, I mean, having learnt a little bit from startup communities in the past, but also taken some good things from the existing public clouds. I've never been a COO before, as you know. I've been more commercial, but I think where we are as a business is there is probably a higher commercial slant to my role because we've got such good operational people already in time, so that helps me. But to your point about how do we shape that organisation up, it's very much along the lines of getting the right people, the right DNA. At the moment, I think we've got great DNA actually, but we need to add in certain areas. And when I say DNA, I don't mean expertise, I mean mindset.
Yeah.
The would you trust them with your credit card? That type of thing. And at the moment, I think there's some work to be done because we've got some gaps. And the first hire, as you know, was a VP of HR. So I'm pleased we've now been able to secure Nicola into the team, and she's got a job on her hands to try and standardise everything. Because otherwise, if we didn't, it would become the Wild West. No salary bands, no job specs, no clear guidelines, etc. That's number one job. Not that we want to go over process. We just need to set some key elements and portray the Nscale values as well.
And the values are important, obviously. Yeah, they've got to be clearly defined, and you say they're probably in that DNA. So you just need to sort of do a bit of self-reflection to work out what they are, perhaps.
Yeah.
But obviously the new people coming in, and now with new leaders, with Nicola yourself, how do you define what a good person looks like? That fits. You're not googly, so what fits Nscale? And what's the framework? Because you can get the best technical people, you can get the best salespeople, but if they don't fit in the business,
there's a couple of elements here, and I know what you're alluding to. There's a bunch of qualities which I think you inherently look for.
Yeah.
And you're a dad, right? You've got 4 daughters, and one thing I'll always say to my girls is always be yourself. And I think I alluded to that earlier. And don't try and be something you're not, because that is so and that points to being authentic and genuine. So that's aspect. And then there's the other element of integrity, and that is one of the cardinal sins that I don't like is, in order to win the deal, it's perceived that salespeople will say anything.
Yeah,
that's probably 70% true, but it shouldn't be right. I mean, if you can't, if you put yourself in the customer's shoes, and you're desperate for something to be fixed, and you need a specific solution, and you'll set the expectations that we can do that and we can do it really fast, but the reality is the salesperson, or the representative of the company knows that they can't be done in any way. Typically, it's always deadlines that are missed. Then, for me, that's low integrity, because you're going down a path where you've got the eyes on winning the deal, but you're winning it under false pretenses, really. So I'm a big believer that if you can't do it in the right time frame, then you should say that and give the reasons why you can't do that, but ideally work out a path of how that can be overcome. But never set the false expectation that, we can deliver now, when reality is it's still 6 months away. Because I've been on both sides of that. I learned very quickly in my early days as a salesperson not to do that because I ended up.
It just doesn't work. I mean, ultimately, if you put the customer first and that's front and center, then you're usually going to muddle your way through and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
But if you start thinking about yourself and what you need and your needs, then ultimately that relationship's going to be soured.
Yeah, exactly. And you do see people in this industry because it is the next industrial revolution.
Yep.
You know, it is changing everything we're doing, not just in business, but as normal human beings, on the internet. So it attracts people who want to make money fast, and therefore some of those are good people, some are not, and therefore I'm a big believer that as we grow Nscale, we find the right people with that high degree of integrity who are in it for the right reasons. So as well as, growing the business, which is key, but growing the business in the right way, in an ethical way, in a sustainable way, but also helping customers in the same way as well. And not that we're all here to ring the bell at the New York Stock Exchange, which is not a motivation or shouldn't be. So back to the qualities. So integrity then leads to trust, right?
Yeah.
So, and you just reminded me that I've pulled out 2 AWS qualities there. So customer obsession is number one. And the business, as well as the other 15 LPs, is built around that. And I totally subscribe to that. The other thing is build trust. Yeah. That is another LP. And without it, you're nothing as a business, you're nothing as an individual, right? So trust, I think, for me, on an index level, trumps performance. And what I mean by that is, and this is what I think you're alluding to others, there's that SEAL Team 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, Navy SEALs. Simon Sinek talks about it. It's never a shame they pull from British military, from the SAS or, parachute regiment or whatever, because they've got good stuff going on as well. But so he talks about the metrics about performance on the battlefield to then who you trust in the situation, and that the selection process for the Navy SEALs would say, we would actually pick someone we can trust better than a top performer in the battlefield. Because if you look at a top performer that's got low trust, where are you going to be? You know what I mean? Take it off the battlefield, look at it in the work environment. It may be someone in a sales team who's knocking it out of the park, quadrupling their target every year. But how are they achieving that? Is it to the detriment of others in the organisation? Is that preventing others in the organisation flourishing? Is that encouraging people to leave the organisation because even though they're doing the numbers, they are not the right fit or showing the right values for the organisation? So I would sacrifice people like that to people who you can trust. Still need to perform well. You don't want to hide trust.
They've got to be coachable. So
exactly.
Trust
exactly.
That's it.
Exactly, that's coachable. So if they've got the right mindset, a growth mindset, they've got the right levels of integrity. They're great communicators. They've got an appetite and a passion to succeed. Their values align to what the business is trying to do, but they're not quite there on performance. Much rather have someone like that, because, as you said, performance can be coached.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think what's fascinating, obviously, being a recruiter, so placed, God knows how many people have placed over the years, and actually working with different managers, it's a skill in itself, is identifying talent. Yeah, it's a big skill. And so many managers don't know how to identify talent, how to interview, how to screen, and then also how to look after them when they come in. Yeah. And so much time is wasted either looking for talent or actually just not looking after talent. Yeah. And you get that right, then that's half the battle.
Exactly. Yeah, it is. And if you get it wrong, it's expensive too, right?
Very.
Yes.
Time, money, all of it.
Your fees.
My fees. My very, very economical fees.
Yeah. No, you're right. Getting it right is probably the biggest challenge, I think, in a fast-growing business. Yeah. It's something which is difficult to do, which, you rely upon gut feel, and how do you quantify gut feel? It's difficult to do that. But if you've got several people that you know in the organisation who share the values of the company that you respect, etc., 2 or 3 people like that in the interview process, all coming together afterwards with a decision either way, I think is a good
And I think, as a founder, Josh has done a great, it's another thing he's done really well is bringing that very solid core senior leadership team that then filter that down.
Yeah.
And if you get that right, which it appears to be is the case.
And he has no ego. That's the other thing. He's very humble. And, he's been hugely successful. He will continue to be hugely successful. But he's brought in people that he knows he can learn from, who are smarter than him in the room in certain areas. No one's as smart as him in other areas when he talks to investors. But yeah, I mean, having that, well, he said Nscale, not that I'd put that out there on our values, but they have a no dickhead policy, like the New Zealand All Blacks. And however you quantify that, it says what it is, right? And having that at the back of your mind, not that it's politically correct to say that, it's a good benchmark to have, and he's done that. Maybe I slipped through the net there, but maybe he's done that, and that, and any organisation really reflects who's at the top down, isn't it? People tend to hire in reflection of themselves, and I try not to do that from a bias point of view, but it tends to be a natural thing, and therefore you get a lot of like-minded people together. So if the person at the top's good, then the rest of the organisation should follow. Yeah.
And that is fascinating how you've got that going already so early, because it often takes companies and startups quite a while to sort of find that. And I think you've got it right now. You've got some great talent. Obviously, it's not going to be easy.
No,
it's never smooth.
Yeah.
But in terms of obviously, getting clear what the pitch is, getting the relationships going, getting the talent in, building that culture. I mean, I suppose the other thing is you're largely a remote business as well.
At the moment, we are. Yeah. I mean, and we're spread across the globe, right? So I mean, where there are people resident on sites, where the DCs are.
Yeah.
So Norway, Scandinavia, and more coming on stream. But in London, we've got a WeWork open office membership. So there's probably about 30 of us based around the UK, which will congregate
and then Belgium as well, I think, and some in the Netherlands. That's right. And it's all, it's, I mean, it's great, but it's getting them all together and it's building that team, isn't it?
So to that point, that's one thing I did recognise. So we had the first proper all hands really at the end of August, and I was able to say hi, but also we did that virtually. But the end of September, we're doing one in London, so we booked out half a day, drinks, etc. Because people being spread over different places, they know their world, they don't know the world, whatever. What is the vision? They could quite justifiably ask, so what are we doing then? And so we need to be able to create a forum where we can do that. And I guess it's another thing I learned from Google. Every Friday they have TGIF, so thank God it's Friday. And if you're based in Mountain View in the campus there, you all rock up to one of the amphitheatres there, and you got Sundar Pichai. You used to have Sergey Brin in the room, a few others, and they would give you an update on the week, and there'd be a microphone in the middle.
Oh, wow.
And anybody in Google could walk up to that microphone and ask a question. And they,
that's incredible.
It's right for an organisation that size, right? And also they had what's called a Dory online, so you could then submit a question that way, and then the audience would vote it up or vote it down, and the top ones would go through. So, and that's actually how some of the Google contracts that were going to go to defence were, stopped from happening, because it was raised in forums such as that, because the Googlers at the time didn't want to be seen working on that sort of thing. So as part of our all hands, the first one in face-to-face in September, we've created the Dory as well. We won't have a microphone in the middle, but not enough people for that. But we have the idea of a top three. We're going to recognise performance as well, so Nscaler of the month, etc., nominated by everyone in the organisation. And then it's split. It's 90 minutes max, so no injury time.
Yeah.
Of course, I introduced Jamie Vardy as the opening slide. But the aim is that Josh, I introduce it. Josh does the view from the CEO. Then Ron, our CFO, gives the view from his point of view. Talk about where our investment contracts coming in, And then we've got, an update in the various areas of the company, and then the Q&A at the end. And then
that's really important.
So it is.
Yeah, particularly with startups.
And to keep it going. Same format and keep it going. If we don't do that, then people won't know who they are, who they're working for, all those sorts of things. So.
No, indeed, fantastic. So, so the future then for Nscale. So obviously you've pivoted your strategy a little bit, going down some of the partnerships and white labeling services. You've just talked about capacity in Europe and then the future capacity in America. Where's it going? Or is that not defined yet?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like we've got a good tailwind with what we have, which we'll hopefully be able to announce at the end of the year, contract-wise. Those will accelerate our scale. Depend on how many series of investment we'll have. Series A is just closing. Already talking about Series B. I would give us 2 years, and then I would say we have achieved what we set out to achieve, as in to be the hyperscaler purposely engineered for AI. And I think we may be an attractive proposition.
Yeah.
So certainly to organisations that don't have a footprint inside of Europe. Whether we IPO or not, I don't know. It's probably, more of a question for Josh. But I think we could build a really strong, solid business that could keep going as it is, for some time. So, if for me, a few years left in the working world, give it 5. I'd like to think within that time we have made a name for ourselves.
Yeah.
We've been recognised as an employer that has built strong relationships with employees in the marketplace. We've helped them move along their career as well, but also we're recognised by our partners as they're a great business to work with. And then if we get acquired or an event occurs, it would be nice to get to that point as well, help with retirement and things such as that.
And that's and obviously that may well be the plan, for a big event like that. And often for startups, scale-ups, that's all. It's always on their mind or agenda at some point, whether it's 2 or 5 years. Yeah. For organisations that maybe a little bit further behind what Nscale have done already, so quickly. Yeah. And I appreciate you've only been there a sort of short period of time, but obviously you've built businesses, you've sold businesses, you've worked in the larger cloud providers. What would you sort of give them sort of advice for? Because it's a lonely place. As a CEO or a founder or a CRO. Yeah. What sort of advice would you give them to make sure that they keep that sort of journey on that trajectory?
There's probably 3 things. Belief.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you may be the only person in the room that actually believes. But if you truly believe in what you're trying to achieve, then stay true to yourself. Yeah. Because of it. The second thing would be don't focus on the end game. If you focus on the number or the exit, you're not going to achieve that in any way. It's like a sales target. If you focus on the sales target, you're not going to hit it. You've got to focus on how you can help customers along the way achieve what they want to achieve, and then it will look like after itself. Same thing for any startup organisation. It started for a reason. It's filling a gap in the market, and therefore be the best you can at that. And if you can do that, then it will look after itself. And then the third thing is back to DNA. Be absolutely meticulous about who you hire. And if the hiring process takes, sometimes straight away, that's the person that needs to come and join us. Sometimes you're in 2 minds. And if you can't quantify the reason for it, having met them a few times, don't hire.
Yeah, listen to your gut.
Yeah,
exactly. Don't force into it.
Because I was always told a long time ago that if you read a CV and you're not sure, do the interview. But if you've done the interview and you're not sure after the interview, don't hire. Because it's not right for them, and it's not right for the company.
Yeah, you can't convince yourself.
No, exactly. And you can't, because interestingly, people, when they come to interviews, will try and say the right things to get the job, right? That's the game we play.
Isn't it? Yeah. Selling yourself.
And it is a game. That's why I think, trying to get under the skin of that and drawing out the right human qualities is key. And whether you do that through psychometric testing or whatever you can, but there's nothing better than face-to-face, dialogue and interaction, verbal and non-verbal. And therefore, if it doesn't feel right, there's a reason for it. So don't hire for the sake of it. And also that I would include people who come with reputations as well. So people who come with great reputations in the industry, check them out. I mean, absolutely check them out.
Yeah, often it's not always as it seems.
No, exactly.
So,
yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
And just before we finish up, so obviously the industry is evolving crazy. It's generative AI being as new as it is. You said yourself we're at the early doors. This.
Yeah.
What's your sort of thoughts on the industry, where it's heading now, and how do companies prepare for that?
Well, I would love to see someone like Tesco's or Greggs or a mainstream retailer come knocking on our door and say, I want to achieve this through generative AI. Now, this is no slight on those organisations at all, but I don't think the mainstream consumer-facing organisation, even financial services, life sciences, I think, are more advanced. Manufacturing is definitely more advanced. But the mainstream hasn't picked up on that as yet. When they do, they'll need a lot of help to get the most out of generative AI. So I think there's an element of people like Nscale, the public clouds, to help deliver what those organisations want to achieve by partnering with organisations that have the skill set. So it wouldn't be Nscale's intent to build out a professional services organisation with consultancy skills. Some people may be thinking about, well, maybe we should do that. But there are very good organisations out there already, the GSIs, who can do that. So forming strong partnerships with those and help them deliver to the mainstream traditional enterprises achieve what they achieve is key. I honestly think that's still about 12, 18 months away.
Yeah.
But probably in 6 months' time, you'll see it starting to happen. But from what we're seeing in the market, everyone is still wanting to build the models. That will rationalise. That will shake out. There'll be a few, like the mainstreams, like the Metas, the Googles, etc., the Anthropics, will become the norms. There'll be a few specific industry ones for software development or whatever. And then everyone else will draw upon those models, bring their own data, and then achieve what to achieve. But there'll be a more bias towards bringing expertise to the table. Yeah.
Certainly an exciting time to be at Nscale by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I hope so.
And for anyone that might join.
Exactly. Yeah. And we are sort of, once we've done our rationalisation internally, we'll be on a big push then. So,
well, you know who to call, obviously.
Exactly, of course. Already talking to you.
Indeed. But look, I mean, it's really exciting. Maybe have to get Josh on here at some point, but I know it's quite private. So we'll see.
Well, yeah. I'll chat to him.
Talk about some of the challenges that he's facing. But, I mean, it's fantastic what he's done and what you guys are doing with him. It really is. And I can't wait to keep watching it, to be fair.
Yeah.
So it's been really good. But thank you very much for joining.
Cheers.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers. I hope you all enjoyed today's conversation. Karl shared great insight into his journey from engineering to sales, his entrepreneurial ventures, and what it's been like working with giants like Google and AWS. Next week, I've got a fantastic conversation lined up with Nigel Cannings, the CEO and co-founder of Intelligent Voice. He'll be sharing his unique path from law to tech, one you're not going to want to miss. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to follow Asobi on LinkedIn so you don't miss a thing.